when I'm not calculating how successful I'd have to be to justify using macadamia nut milk. I like to answer questions and comments that I get on YouTube, so let's get to it. Man, that bakery show was lit AF. Can't wait for what's next. Ice cream parlor? Thrift shop? Well, hey, joke's on you because I got fired from my bakery gig. So if you've been watching some of the videos, I did a video on the Fishman Loudbox amp. It's like an acoustic amp. And I really just wanted to try it out. So my buddy Pasha, nasty violin player, has this gig that's just outside of like a local bakery, and you just kind of just jam for a couple hours, right? So I was like, hey, can I sit in with you on this gig? And he's like, yeah, sure, of course, right? So we rocked the house. We definitely rocked that bakery like it's never been rocked before. Everybody seemed to like it. I just wanted to do it for the content. And then the owners were like, oh, thank you so much. And they tried to pay me. And I'm like, no, it's okay, you know? And they're like, no, we insist. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to turn down money. So they paid me. And then we did it again next week. And I was like, all right, cool. This is like pretty chill, whatever. So we did that. Astounding success. Probably one of the finer outdoor bakery gigs that the city of Sarasota has ever seen. And then I get the news after that the bakery gig no longer requires my services. And I got fired from my bakery gig, which is pretty sad. But the saddest thing of all is, so I guess they couldn't afford me, but I never asked to be paid. So it's like, well, you guys are the ones that offered to pay me. Like, now it's too expensive. So that's kind of funny. And then the great thing about that, too, is, like, this same week. So I've played, like, a bunch of, like, hotels and stuff. Like, I've done tons of shows at the Westin here. And, like, playing, like the finer hotels is, like, such a choice gig. So we're starting to contact some other venues and stuff, like the Ritz-Carlton or whatever, because, you know, the world's kind of opening up again, and it'd be kind of cool to do like a video series about maybe like playing different, like, you know, hotels that are kind of opening up again. So we're talking to these people at the Ritz, and we're just pitching it, and the response back was like, oh, we've decided to go in a different direction. And it's like, well, we didn't decide on an initial direction, so how can you go from a no direction to a different direction? So I kind of felt like I got fired again for a gig that I never really asked. I don't know, it's funny. I think it's just kind of like funny just getting fired in general. Well, I mean, it's not, but for me, I always try to make it funny, right? Because there's always going to be better opportunities out there. So if you've gotten fired from a bakery gig or another gig that you never even had in the first place, don't fret, because when one door closes, another door opens, so I've heard. And yeah, all you bakeries out there, hit me up, because I'm ready to rock this house, and I do it on the cheap. So let's get this going. What's the weirdest thing you've ever experienced during a gig? So here's a great question. So I was playing this restaurant that shall remain nameless, and we're just doing an acoustic duo thing, having a good time. It was a good crowd and everything. And then the owner's girlfriend wanted to like sing a song or whatever. I'm like, okay, cool, great, you know? And she was fine, you know, it was a very casual type thing. And it's one of those things where like, well, you kind of do what the owner wants, right? So she gets up, she sings a song, it was fine. And then afterwards, she's on the mic, right? And it's like, yo, it's funny, being a performer, you get this like weird sixth sense when something bad is about to happen. And I'm like, I really feel like I shouldn't have given her that microphone. And then she starts talking about all the awesome sexual stuff the owner does for her. And this is like a family restaurant. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what do I do? And the owner's sitting there and he's just kind of like smiling and nodding. And it was like the absolute most awkward thing. So me and Kindred were playing this show. So she goes into this like little speech at a family restaurant, mind you, and then gives the mic back to us. And then they kind of start like making out like in the corner. And I'm just like, okay. And then I'm like, this next song is called Stand By Me. And then we just go right into Stand By Me, because I tried to cleanse the entire restaurant with like the most wholesome thing that I could. And that was definitely the weirdest, most bizarre thing that has ever happened to me personally at a gig. Do you make the puppets? Also, where are the puppets? So Andrea and I have puppets made of ourselves. They were made on Etsy by a Etsy Muppet maker. Muppeteer, and they are inside of a cabinet now, because they used to be, first of all, I used to have them just here in the studio. And then people would come in and be like, what the hell are those Muppets? Those are so creepy to have Muppets of yourself and your friend just hanging out. So then I moved them from the studio into my room. That was a bad decision, because there's nothing creepier than like going to sleep and then waking up in the middle of the night and you see these Muppets just looking at you. So I had to put them in like a chest. And they're in a chest over there, and they're sealed away for right now. So we'll probably break the Muppets out again soon, but I just needed to take a little break from it because it got a little too creepy.
Go sit in a vintage guitar shop for half hour and you'll have more info than presented here just by listening to people test old Telecasters and Les Pauls.
Yeah, okay. Just go in a guitar shop and then listen to people noodle on Tellys and Les Pauls and see how much you learn. The only thing you're actually going to learn, coming from someone who's worked at guitar shops, is how thin that last shred of sanity is. If you're listening to people try out old guitars and you're trying to listen and learn from the masters of it, no, that's the actual dumbest, saltiest thing that I've ever heard in my life. In a post-apocalyptic world, humanity is split between two warring cults. One is led by Johnny Greenwood, and one is led by Graham Coxon. Who wins? I mean, this is a pretty interesting question. So if you don't know, one of them is the Radiohead guitarist, and one of them is the Blur guitarist. So I think it depends on the state of the apocalypse and how much technology plays a role. I feel like if it's still a tech-savvy apocalypse, I'm going with the Johnny Greenwood cult. I feel like the Radiohead fans are probably a little more savvy when it comes to engineering weapons and maybe kind of like communicating logistics. But I feel like the Blur fans would be better just fighters, like brawlers. So I think it requires a little bit of context, but I would probably be in the Johnny Greenwood cult. Do you feel pretentious if you refer to notes as double flat? Example, A double flat instead of G. 100%. You will never hear me talk about double flat notes, and that is only because I would feel pretentious about doing it. I guess for me, I think of more practical kind of like applications of stuff, and I teach a lot of music theory on this channel, but I don't get so deep into the weeds where I kind of have to talk about anything being a double flat. And again, what that even means is like, all right, so here's the A note, the 5th fret on the low E string is A. A flat would be the 4th fret. A double flat would just be a G. Now there are some instances where, depending on what key you're in, you would like kind of manipulate something, or if you're talking about like a scale or something, where that G would actually be double flat if maybe like G flat was another note. It kind of gets complicated, but that's why like for the majority of stuff that I would ever talk about, and especially with communicating to another musician, I would just say G every single time, because G is pretty much always G in practical context. And you know, maybe there's a lot of situations that I would never find myself in where that's wrong, but yes, I feel very pretentious saying double flat. Any advice for someone who wants a job playing guitar? Again, my best advice is to be proficient at your instrument, but definitely do not neglect being a cool dude or a cool girl, because all your opportunities are going to come from networking, way more so than your actual skill. So you have to have enough skill to not like screw the job up once you get it, but the networking is by far the most important part. So if it's something where you want to get like hired for more stuff, and again, who am I to say, because I just got fired from my bakery gig, but because of that bakery experience, I actually met more people and more gigs came from that. So I guess it was a net positive experience. But yeah, you just have to be, likable enough for people to want to work with you and hire you. So again, just be good to people is my number one thing, and practice enough where you're prepared for anything, and then also have methods for people to contact you, whether it's a business card or something on your phone that you can just send somebody right away, and you'll figure it out. So for listening homework this week, I'm going to throw you to the new St Vincent. St Vincent, one of my all-time favorite artists. Got a new album coming out this month, and the first couple tracks are cool, but the third track down is like, yes, this is exactly what I've been waiting for. I love Annie Clark, love St. Vincent. This is definitely by far my favorite of her 3 newest tracks, and now I'm stoked for the album, so check that out. Also, if you have any more questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, the website, Patreon. I will talk to you all soon. Thanks a lot.